I realized early on when I was working production, I had to shoot from the back of a pickup truck in the rain. And I was like, yeah, I think post-production's better. I think it's warmer and drier. That's the most interesting thing, is that kids are using the same software that guys are grading Hollywood feature films on. You know, if you wanted to change careers midway, I would recommend going, to Manhattan Edit Workshop. You want to learn to be an editor.
We have color correction classes so that you can learn everything Bob talked about, basically. You just said a 17K camera.
Yep.
I don't know how many Ks are enough.
What's the meaning of this, Bob?
Right.
Hey everyone, I'm Rafi Salem here back again with the Manhattan Edit Workshop, and I'm proud to have Josh Apter and Jason Banke with me, and our special guest today, Bob Caniglia. Did I pronounce it correctly?
Well done. Thank you very much.
So Josh, why don't we start off with you telling us a little bit about Manhattan Edit Workshop, a little history, introduce Jason, introduce Bob, and then we'll be on our way.
All right. Well, first I want to say both Jason and I are licking our wounds this morning. The Eagles and Bills both lost, and not just it was pretty bad. So that said, now you know that we're Buffalo and Philadelphia fans. Manhattan Edit Workshop is not a Giants fan or anything else. It's it's a mishmash, but it's we're not a happy Monday today, to be sure. But in terms of our background, we've been doing our thing for, over 20 years now. And Bob, you've known us for a lot of those years. It's, I know we all are just like, wow, 20 years. But no one had any gray in any up here, down here, any of that stuff back then. We started with the philosophy that learning the why of editing is just as important as learning the how. With a class, it was like a 4-week workshop that expanded to a 6-week workshop with an artist in residence, and just really embracing all of the tools that an editor needs to have in their toolbox, including the one about those creative ones. And we've expanded since to do training in all kinds of things like, graphic design, sound design, color correction. We started doing classes in Resolve. I mean, this was years ago, and it's just like out of the gate, one of the most popular classes that we held, just packed houses every time. And, it's just, you could tell that was, well, I think part of it, and you'll tell that story, was like, sort of bringing that pricing down of that tool to be attainable, right? So the barrier of entry is now low. And so this flood of people coming in, surprisingly, a lot of them cinematographers too. And I think we can talk about why that, why we're seeing that. But, just a fantastic class. Happy to have the support of Blackmagic. And look, to another 20 years, right? That'd probably be another like 400 losses for the Eagles and Bills combined by then, Jason. I'll throw it to you. Maybe you can articulate it better than I can.
Well, at least we represent, the only New York team, because shot fire there. But I was just, when you were saying that, I was like, I remember when we first started doing Resolve classes, we had to get special cards and rigs and change out we had people sharing machines because it was too much for us to do it. And now it's such a different, we have 5 people in a class today doing color correction with Resolve. So at least I think it's 5, and I'm straight up iMac. So a lot has changed. I think we first crossed paths with you. I mean, maybe Josh didn't, but I did. Was it when I think we had you for Edit Fest New York or something? You may have came in and done something for that. That was in 2011 or something to that effect. That sounds about right. But we've grown a lot since then. We've done our own programs, and Bob and Blackmagic have supported that stuff. But I mean, it was at least, I think it was at a fest, and you were probably talking about getting the panels out and everything like that. That was when I think it started to change, right?
Yeah, and I think actually we were in there before that when it was still DaVinci trying to do a training session there, and then Blackmagic bought them in 2009, and then it took them a little while to reconfigure it all so that we went from a $500,000 system down to $995 software, which is now $295, although the free version would kick that one's butt. So that is when things change. And so, yeah, 2011 sounds about right for doing Editfest, because by then we started to add other stuff too. You know, now there's editing and visual effects and Fairlight audio and all kinds of things. It was 15 years this month that Blackmagic bought DaVinci, and I came over with them. And yeah, so it's 20 years total I've been at DaVinci at this point. Eek.
Well, congratulations. Where's the Rolex? You got the.
Yeah, I don't know if you've checked our price list, but anyway, yeah, look, it's been a wild ride. It's cool because it's not just Resolve. They've, you know, since then you look at all the different products, the ATEM switchers, the cameras, you know, all kinds of converters and routers and Ultimat. I mean, it's kind of funny that they bought a lot of different products, Intel, you know, a lot of products that everybody knew back in the day as the premier brands, and today they're all under one roof. And if you had told me that 20 years ago, I would have said, you know, what hedge fund owns them, not, you know, Blackmagic. So it's very cool. Very cool to see how we have grown so much over the years.
Yeah, it's also like you can't do what you do for this period of time without being passionate about it, right? You can't fake
Oh,
that. Like you have to, like there's some part of you that seriously you can't. It's like you have to believe in the product very deeply.
100%. I mean, early on when we first got there, I remember thinking, I don't know if this is going to work out for me, but it was. But also I said, well, where am I going to go? I said, you know, I'm not going to go to another color correction company at this point. I know where these
Mhm.
guys are headed. This is going to be crazy. But over time, they keep buying all the, you know, buying or building new toys that I would want to play with. Like you know, I look around my office, I have a ton of stuff, but if I didn't work at Blackmagic, I would have half of this stuff anyway, because, you know, I've been in this business almost 40 years. Well, oh, that hurt. And you know, it'll be 40 years in March when I got my first paycheck shooting industrial videos. But the fact that they have all these cool products that they all go together, you know, like today I'm using, I don't know, 6 cameras and 2 switchers, and
Mhm.
but I like playing with all that stuff. So yeah, you do get passionate about it, and people, you know, I think what's interesting to me is that our customer base is very passionate. You know, they really appreciate what we do for the price points and all that kind of stuff. You know, and I worked at other companies like Quantel and Snell and all that. No one ever came on the booth and said, "Thank you for charging $1 million for this box." You know, that wasn't a thing.
Yeah, I remember that first year at NAB. It must have been, gosh, was it 2013 that you got is like Apple took off and you guys moved in almost in the same spot. And it was
Yeah.
like a football field, how
I'm
big that
sorry,
booth was.
what company was that? Was that
This
some
was
type of
NAB.
fruit?
This was
What? No, was it a fruit company? Like,
oh,
what are you
that
talking?
company. Well, if we
Yeah.
recall, they used to do training at the show, these giant training
Yeah.
days. And it was kind of absurd how much money they spent to do it. And of course, one year they just said, look, we don't we don't need to spend this money to reach these people. It's easier to reach them without doing this, frankly. And you know, Blackmagic really filled that gap, right? It was like South Hall, you dominated the front.
Alcohol. Yep.
And the camera came out, right? That year? Was that the Ursa? Is that
Yeah, it was, no, I think, well, let's see, 2012, 2013. Yeah, one of those. I think when we were there, the very first camera came out, which was the silver cinema camera that we had, 2.5K.
Mhm.
And the funniest part was that when we were building the booth, we had a wall around our whole booth, and then we had another wall around the camera section that was like in a little tiki hut camera scene. And the day the show opened, obviously all that stuff has to be down. So now the vendors are coming in to go to their booth before they open the doors. And I was standing on the edge of the booth, just kind of with arms folded and looking out. And somebody walked by from another manufacturer, says, "Hey, wait, are you guys making cameras?" I go, "Yeah, I don't know. It's not show open time yet. I can't talk about it."
Super secret stuff.
He's like, "I see it." I'm like, I don't know what to tell you."
It's not maybe that's a camera. I remember we actually you guys were kind enough to loan us one to shoot I think it was when we had gone from Edit Fest to Sight Sound and Story, and we used it and we were like, oh, now we have to get some PL mount lenses for this thing because
Yeah.
it didn't work with our, you know, with our whatever Nikons or Zeiss lenses that we had. But it's funny. I'm going to transition quickly because you just came back from another show that I
Yeah.
used to attend regularly, break my rear end at those incredibly long days. But how was IBC?
IBC was great. I really appreciate the fact that they've shortened it from 5 days to 4 days. So that part's helpful. That was one good thing that came out of the pandemic is they shortened IBC. But IBC was cool because we had just finished. We just released Resolve 19, so that was out of beta, so that was released there. We showed off the new Ursa Cine 17K 65 millimeter camera. So that was kind of a huge launch there. Neat to see that, to be honest. And then we launched a new monitor for the Pixis camera. So it's just a new monitor that you can actually use the touchscreen on the monitor to control the settings of the camera, and it can be mounted in a variety of ways. There's a couple different ways. It'll also work with the Ursa Cine 12K that has also just started shipping. The Pixis camera, which is 6K, started shipping, so that was good to see. And then we had a tech display of the immersive camera that Apple kind of launched for us in a way by mentioning that this new immersive camera was going to come out to shoot dual 8K with one lens on the front with bug
For the
eyes, and
Vision
we had
Pro, right? Yeah.
yeah, for the Vision Pro. So that whole workflow will be, coming out shortly, and the camera itself will be delivering sometime next year. So so that was kind of neat too to get some people to see that. And as I say, the 17K was really cool, and that to 65 millimeters. So that's you're going to be able to shoot an IMAX movie, and it's that whole new body that the 12K and the 17K share. That body will also be the same body used for the new immersive camera. So that'll be cool.
So, so I love being the voice of the layperson who um, really has a less of a clue than an industry professional. And ordinarily in these talks, we're talking with editors and the artists in residence, and we're talking with people in the industry on the other side. And you mentioned before that you got your start shooting industrial videos. So pardon my ignorance, but did you ever want to be on the other side of the film industry? Did you want to did you want to be in Hollywood, or did you want to be?
So yeah, well, there are a few things. I moved to Hollywood when right after I graduated college. I was working. I moved from the industrial film to work at a TV station in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and then I loaded up my car, drove out to California, got a job at Disney Channel for a little while. Then I wound up working for a company called 525 Post in Hollywood that was like the hot spot of all post production in at that time. We were doing music videos. So whether it was Van Halen or Michael Jackson or Madonna or Prince or you name it, if they were on the Warner Brothers label, we were pretty much doing all the music videos back then. So that was kind of cool. I mean, I always wanted to be in front of the camera, which I get to do here at Blackmagic. But in terms of, I realized early on when I was working production and having to shoot I had to shoot like a marathon or something from the back of a pickup truck in the rain. And I was like, yeah, I think post-production's better. I think it's warmer and drier. so I was like, yeah, I don't think I'm doing this. So I moved to LA. I wound up getting a job there doing that. And then I wound up moving to New York in the early 90s and worked at Broadway Video for a while. And then somebody asked me to demo a product at NAB in 1993, and I haven't missed an NAB since, and have worked for manufacturers ever since. But you don't lose your eye from shooting. You don't lose, your ability to know a bad edit when you see one, and all of those good things. I mean, frankly, when Resolve was first out, when I was working at DaVinci, I didn't know how to run a Resolve because I didn't have one. They didn't say, here's a $500,000 worth of equipment to put in your basement and maybe you can learn how to figure this out. So that never happened. It wasn't until I got to DaVinci to Blackmagic that I started to use Resolve. And that's another thing. I would use Resolve if I didn't work here too. I had a lot of friends back in the Hollywood days and that were editors and whatnot. And I never said, hey, you guys should move over to Resolve, but eventually they've all kind of come over because you don't change your editing platform until until there's a reason. And they were getting projects where the colorist was like, you got to do it in Resolve so it's easier for me to do it in Resolve or whatever it was. And so a bunch of those guys have come over, and I was surprised we could teach old dogs new tricks, but it wasn't too bad for them.
Yeah, we were talking before about, I used to, when I was making, like, these were probably student films in the 90s, and we wanted to do any sort of color correct, we'd have to like pay like cash money at overnight shifts at these facilities, like in almost, was it Midtown somewhere, like in the 30s, but they'd give you good rates, but you're paying for the expertise because you had no access to the hardware or the machinery, and you certainly didn't know how to use it, but like that was worth, like, now you see videos where it's just like before and after, it's the split screen, like you can't even imagine what difference it made, but the cost was way too high. And that's why, like, you guys just basically said, well, what would happen if we essentially gave it to you, right? Because the free version's still really ballsy. I mean, it's not like you're getting, a burn-in, like, logo or something that you can't remove. It's got certain limitations for, a level above which you can afford the price tag of, what is it, $299 anyway?
$295, yeah. Yeah, or it comes with a camera. So
Exactly.
you buy a camera,
Right.
get that software. But I think what it really is today, there's still those high-end facilities because people need, they want the expertise. They're going to pay for it. I can give out scalpels for $1. It doesn't make everybody a surgeon. So, there's definitely, but what it does is it enables people to learn the craft a little bit. Clearly people share more information than I ever dreamed of back when I was working in post. The guy that sat next to you wouldn't teach you anything. Or today there's all kinds of there's schools like yours. I mean, you used to only be able to get training if you went to the manufacturer, back in the linear edit days, last century. But today, just the amount of camaraderie and the amount the ability to go and teach. You wouldn't have to go to college if you knew what you wanted to do. You could go take the film classes at all take the classes at all the training facilities, and you'd learn more than you would if you sat for 4 years at a college. Of course, the benefits of going to college there's other benefits of learning how to grow up and learning how to do a lot of other things. So that's true. But if you wanted to change careers midway, I think I would recommend going, to Manhattan Edit Workshop. You want to learn to be an editor and all the other things that are out there. And of course, the software being home so you could practice it was great. I mean, I went to CMX school in 1989. And I got back to Disney Channel and they had bought a different system. They bought a Grass Valley. So I was like, I'm glad I spent 2 weeks up there. Bought the jacket. So never touched a CMX after that, only Grass. So it was kind of weird, but I didn't have one at home to practice on like you do now. I mean, everybody can have it. So it's mind blowing to see that. But at the end of the day, you still have to be good at the craft and you have to learn the craft. And that's why we're all here.
Jason,
Yeah, no,
I'm sorry. I was
ahead.
just going to ask Jason because he's boots on the ground. Everything that Bob just said, well, Josh, you could be included in this also, but everything that Bob said about how Resolve has taken over and, you need to learn it. You need to, like, Jason, what are you seeing? Like, are people respecting, understanding, and appreciating what they're learning at Manhattan Edit Workshop, because that's really what they need to know to get ahead in the industry?
Well, yeah, I think the requirement for quality, when it comes to like something like color correction and things like that, or it's expected now. Whereas, I knew people that would just hit the whatever in Final Cut Pro, the auto whatever to get, the white balance right and call it a day or whatever. But like everything, but the expectations of the quality of what you're shooting. I mean, you just said a 17K camera. Is that correct?
Yep.
I don't know how many Ks are enough in cameras, but regardless, the expectations are so high now that people need to know more than just editing and the process of that. So these programs like Resolve, which offer such high quality for being able to color correct, and it's affordable and it's available, yeah, we're definitely seeing a drive towards that. A lot of editors are coming back. A lot of businesses are coming back because it has to be part of their workflow, and they don't want to outsource it, or they don't want to do that. So yeah, I mean, we're definitely seeing a shift in expectations to know those types of programs, and Resolve is definitely the high ranking one of that we're seeing from an education side.
I will say one thing though about Blackmagic is that we're not out to cut off anybody. Clearly, Resolve handles every camera, and every file format, and frankly, it's probably one of the best ways to get from one NLE to another. It always was. I mean, even when Final Cut moved to 10, you couldn't move a project from 7 to 10 unless you went through Resolve initially, or backwards or forward. So it's always been that Swiss Army knife. I know people that don't tend to use Resolve, but they still have one. They still have a system anyway because of all the other things it can do to help improve workflow and things like that. So it's an evolving thing. At this point though, because the cameras are well priced and perform so strongly that kids are getting cameras so early on these days that they get the software, so they start using it. So I think that we're just going to see this generation come through that's going to be at least familiar with it, and then hopefully they spend the time to go learn a little bit more, because I know they all think they know everything, but as we all know, if you were a genius at 22, you'd own Facebook, but maybe that would be it.
Probably one of the smartest things I've ever done for my career. It gave me all the tools that I needed to be able to jump into a new career.
Getting myself into a mindset, thinking like an editor, being around people that I can talk to on that level was really invaluable to me.
A lot of the things that I learned from that class, I still think about.
I loved the classroom. I loved the computer stations. We built a sense of community.
And it also instills a lot of confidence in you to take that and go out into the world.
After I took the class, I felt very prepared to take the next step.
I owe Manhattan Workshop the career that I have right now. Things have been going great, and I really have the Manhattan Workshop to thank for that.
I think it's really interesting to see, like, I remember when, Ned, right? Everyone knows Ned Saltz, right? Like we went out, we test drove the Pocket camera, the first gen when it came out. And that was a long time ago. And like, talk about like a sort of an amazing entry level, would you call it? I mean, it's really, thing is, it's a really powerful camera, comes with the software. You're giving people basically an entry point into an entire ecosystem. And yes, you can deal with any camera, but like, sure, why don't you use yours? And then you've got edit, you've got sound, you've got color, you've got like a whole suite. And, that used to be Final Cut Studios territory. And then they kind of ripped their own foundation apart. And I don't think Premiere's taking over. I think they probably would have by now if they were going to. That's just my own personal. I'm still a Final Cut guy, believe it or not. But who cares? It gets the job done, right? But Resolve has all these tools, this kind of end-to-end suite, including the acquisition. So it's a real, it's a real comprehensive product.
Well, we built collaboration too, which I think is helping people learn that if they're editing in Timbuktu, but they need like a really high quality colors, they could find somebody in New York or LA that has real expertise, and because they're using the same project, very easy for them to color grade their project and things like that. But one of the other things that we've done recently is the adding of the camera app to the cell phones. Right. So not only Apple, but also in Android. So that camera app that you can download for free and basically kind of learn the camera, the way our cameras operate and the way our workflow operates with the cloud service and all these other things. And so it's those kind of, I don't know, the handing out the free stuff to get people into the ecosystem really helps. And I know, like, if I had a teenager who said, I want to get a Blackmagic camera, I'd say, well, try working on the phone first. Show me that you actually want to do this more than one day, and they'll learn, and then they can get the camera and realize they already know how to use it. And that's pretty smart and clever the way that they've been able to do that. And
Sure.
so we'll see more and more people that at least touch it. You know what I mean?
But
And I
think
think
about
that's important.
an iPhone, was it there, but 16, right? The iPhone 16 Pro is the newest one. So that camera, those sensors, that technology with all the manual controls in the Blackmagic app compared to what we had when we were seriously shooting like
I know.
Beta SP or Umatic or whatever. Like, I mean,
Right.
the tools are already better. So it's not even like start here. It's like make a career here. Danny Boyle's shooting all like, the highest budget. Well, I guess we've talked to people about like the outrigging on that thing makes it hard to say like he's shooting it on a phone. It's the phone is capturing everything. But I mean, they probably are using something like Blackmagic just to control rare image control on the, on the lens sensor side.
Probably. I mean, back when we would shoot stuff in college, you either shot film or you shot something that everybody would call out for inferior quality. Like, you weren't fooling anyone by going, I shot it on VHS. Can you tell? Yes, I can tell. Or DV cam or any of that stuff, right? But once we get to the cameras that we have today, put in the proper hands, it'd be tough to tell what camera it was, and you wouldn't even pay attention because you want to, if you shoot good images and you tell a good story, your story is not going to be overwhelmed or overshadowed by the fact that you didn't use a good camera, because they're good cameras, and even the cell phone can be a good camera if it's used properly. So, that's a whole different world than what we, we're trying to do. I mean, there were projects I wanted to do, but if I couldn't shoot it on film, why bother? And who had the money to shoot film?
Right. No, it's true. I mean, now it's about who has the money to like get all the toys, all the name brand accessories and things like that cost a fortune, but that's another entire story. But it is true. Like there's no, I remember watching something that was like convinced it was shot on 16 because it looked like it really looked horrible. Not horrible. It looked aged. It was a period piece. I was like, good for them for shooting on film. And I looked in an American cinematographer article about it, and it was just Alexa with filters. It's, so it's really, you can do anything now. That's the interesting thing. You can shoot, I mean, I don't even know what 17K, what the capabilities are for that. It seems like you would be doing it to get multiple angles in a shot almost all the time. Like tell me if the purpose of this, what's the meaning of this, Bob?
Right. So 17K is really, so there's a few things. One is you want to shoot an IMAX film, you're going to be able to get you're going to be able to overshoot for that for 65 mil, right? So that's one. Everybody that's doing virtual productions now where they're shooting in front of an LED wall and they're putting images behind the actors so they actually have something to look at instead of a green screen, they need to put in the highest resolution images they can put behind them. So shooting VFX plates in 17K are really going to help there. But also, yes, as you say, you can shoot 17K. I forget how many, I think it's probably 15 4K images you could pull out of a 17K thing without actually denigrating it. So yeah, you could shoot a whole, you could shoot, well, I'll tell you the one thing I think is funny is that you shoot wildlife stuff. You don't have to get so close. So, we might lose less camera people because you're like, that's fine. We'll shoot at 17K from a distance and we'll be able to get whatever we want out of this. So there are definite advantages for why you would do it, but it's also going to be able to shoot the other Ks as needed. But this sensor is just, out of this world, but it's also it's addressing a certain segment of the market. Not everybody needs to do that, obviously, but it's also a way for us to show people that we're not finished. But eventually the immersive camera will have the ability to do 8K in each eye. Well, that's how you get that, 17K split in half is 8K each. So those are some of the reasons why it's there. But even when we introduced the original 12K camera before the new full sensor one, that one people said, why would I need that? But then VFX guys were shooting the plates. Some people were shooting run and gun and then stabilizing in Resolve so it looked like they had a steady cam on the whole thing. So that's another thing you can do. So
No, we just talked to a cinematographer who was doing like shooting basically at a higher resolution with an 18mm lens, handheld undersling, and they needed that extra size so that they could have some options instead of if they had a great shot, but it was a little wonky, they could figure it out. I mean, I'm waiting, like, when is it going to be essentially like an LED Thunderdome with cameras that are sort of arranged around so that you're getting everything that you could possibly want, and you can use AI tools to do a zoom in or a dolly in or get your coverage. Basically, you're acting as if it were a piece of theater in a way, but you can put everything that you want in there and get any angle and any piece of coverage you want and I mean, not that those decisions shouldn't be made or be acknowledged prior to the fact, but why would you have the option to do almost anything you want after the fact? How far off could that possibly be?
Well, and I think where like even the immersive technology is basically people trying to figure out how to shoot 3D-ish by putting two cameras together or whatever. And then so now this new camera all in one body, because that's the other thing. When you have two cameras that you're trying to align, as those that have tried in the past, it's never going to be exactly the way you want it. So that's where these higher resolutions give us more options. And if you think of the sphere or something like that, this immersive thing might work pretty well if you get 180-degree and then you can turn it into 360. I don't know. There's a lot of things we could be doing, and I look forward to seeing what people do with it. And I think that's one of the things that Grant Petty, our CEO, says all the time. He says, I love when we give people tools and then they come back with stuff that we didn't even think about doing, because that's really what it's all about. Here's a tool, go do something cool with it, and then they do.
I was going to ask about the research and development. The whole idea of 4K being the most amazing thing out there, and now you're talking about 17K. How does that all happen? And does it all happen in the USA, or are you global?
So the company's global. Our headquarters is in Melbourne, Australia. Most of the R&D and guys are there, although we have people around the world actually in different pockets. But the Resolve team is in Singapore, and a lot of it is what technology's out there, what will be out there, and in the future, where can we go? And we learn along the way of certain things, like the push for even higher resolution than 12K even came out of the virtual production, the LED stuff, because the LED walls were pumping out 16K images, and so it's like, all right, let's see what else we can get. So that keeps getting pushed down the line. We get a lot of feedback at shows. That's why we like going to some of the larger shows, because we get feedback to the product managers or to Grant or to whomever. Oftentimes when we go, you have a model of a camera, and then people are like, oh, what you need to do is this, 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 and this. And a lot of times that's already been planned for, but it's good to get confirmation that the next version of a camera or whatever is ticking most of the boxes that people were asking for, or maybe more so. And I've watched that happen at shows where somebody will say, oh, this camera's great, but if you could add this, this, and this, it would be great. And then 6 months later, here comes a new version, where I think a lot of those people think that they were the ones that made it happen, but it was something that was in the pipeline, just gets confirmed. And that's what a lot of that back and forth is all about. And so we're always after information from people. We know there's certain groups of people that we talk to all the time, but there's always a guy that just shows up at NAB, has some great idea that just, gets through to somebody, and it's like, oh, okay. Like our little 810 mini switchers that came out of an idea on a napkin, I think, after NAB one year, and then by IBC, it was a product. And then the following spring, there was a pandemic. And then the next thing you know, we had about 9 models of it because so many people needed it to do Zoom calls. And so that worked out well.
Considering Hollywood in America, and then considering Bollywood in India, which is 3 times the size of the United States, where's your market share?
Yeah. So I always say that, there's that pyramid that we talk about, like in the industry or whatever, and then like the top of the pyramid was where all the expensive stuff was, right? So we sell to the full pyramid. And I think that's the most interesting thing, is that kids are using the same software that guys are grading, Hollywood feature films on, right? Now, the Hollywood guys have a lot more hardware. They've got big, big rooms with projectors and all that. But at the end of the day, it's the same tool. The switchers are the same way. The same switchers that kids are using at school or the church or wherever are the same switchers that they're using, to do the Olympics. So it's very different than the old days of the delineation in product at other manufacturers. Like, well, these are the broadcast products and these are the production products, and never the twain shall meet. So that's not what it is here. They're designed to be tools for whomever. And I'm amazed sometimes that I get calls from, the biggest broadcasters or whatever, and they're asking about one of our small switchers, and I'm like, what do you need that for? They're like, well, we want to be able to put it in a suitcase and take it here and do that. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. And in my head, I'm thinking, yeah, well, if you went to the high school, you could probably find 5 kids that know how to run one today, which, that just wasn't the case. And it's a very, I don't know, it's unique, and I'm amazed at how it happens. Like in the old days, on the last day of IBC, the kids would come from the university and the schools or whatever. And when I worked at a company that sold everything for $1 million, when those kids walked on the booth, I mean, sure, we could show it to them, but they weren't actually customers. But today, at the last day of IBC, these college kids come on the booth and they're like, I already have a camera, I have a switcher, I can show you how to use Resolve. It's like they're going to come and tell us what to do and how they're doing it. They are customers, and so it's a whole different world, and it's fun to be part of it. I'll tell you that. I wish I was 20 years younger coming up in the biz, but oh well.
But we have seen this, like you were talking about, like old tube cameras and video and shooting on film and editing on film. Like, I don't want to go, historian on anybody, but like we've been around for an incredible development and evolution. Like, yes, who knows where it's going to go from here, but we lived through like that process, the whole, like, let's shoot DV and make it like intentional. And then what was it? The D90? What was that first Nikon that came out that had 24, right? It was 720, but it was like, wait a minute. This is like, if you hack this thing, you can get basically a film like image out of it. And so now it's like, I don't know. There's no great, I mean, look, there's always a great time to be around for technology. It just seems like the sea change has been, we are here to bear witness to that. So I'm glad that we're, able to look back, and because part of it is like knowing that the expertise is important, understand it, because a lot of people now, they just buy the stuff and they think they're experts. And I think having to go through an analog process, certainly of editing, what about shooting, where it's like you didn't know what you even had for a day or two. Right. There was something in that mentality that these kids today, they inherently are
off my lawn.
Exactly. Get off my lawn. But they're approaching it differently. Now, I'm not saying it's better or worse. I'm just saying there's a different discipline because it's a digital discipline, not an analog discipline. And
I don't think they don't have access to the people that we had access to when we were coming, to glean knowledge off of. And I think that's a different thing. And as you say, it's not better or worse. It's just that there's a lack of understanding how things were done in the old days, which also makes me feel like I'm telling people to get off my lawn. But there is appreciation for how it was done that helps you figure out how to do it today. I'm jealous completely of some of the things that we would work a week on to get an effect or something. And today it's like, oh, that's a button. I'm like, it's a button. What do you mean it's a button?
I know, but it makes me happy. I mean, I remember these, like, I heard this guy who was like, I'm not, the union was going to pay for his nonlinear editing training. And he's like, nope, not for me. I'm happy on the Steenbeck and that's it. And he was done, gone.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, you know, so this stuff is great if you embrace it. And I think we're not at the age yet, and we will give us enough time where we'll be frightened of it.
Right.
But I don't think, you know, right now we're still looking at this going like, I can't believe a week's worth of work is now like a keyboard shortcut. That's super
Right.
cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when we first came out with our ATEM switchers and they were like, oh, there's a software. And I'm like, software? Who would ever use the software or whatever? Now I'm like, hardware? Who needs the hardware? You know? So at least I've learned over it, but there's that initial resonance of, you know, what do you mean there's a camera app that's going to make your cell phone shoot good stuff? Then you shoot with it and you go, oh, how about that? You know, so yeah, I think also, you know, we were fortunate enough to, you know, have some of this technology early enough that we're not completely, I don't know, like it's foreign to a lot of like even my friends, right? If they weren't in tech, then they're like, oh, I can barely use the cell phone. I'm like, you barely use the cell phone? What's wrong with you? You know, I'm going to have to program everything for the rest of my life for all my friends. Yay. So that part is a little daunting, but you know, in 10 years, I think that younger gen, they'll have all this stuff, but you have to stay up on it, and that there's so much to stay up on. But a lot of times I find that I gravitate to whatever I think is cool at the moment. It's like, oh, that's cool. Let me play with that. Like we introduced like you use Resolve to do the replay for your ATEM switcher, and it works and it's pretty cool. And you know, so that's kind of fun to play with too.
Steve Jobs, I remember in the movie or in the book by Walter Isaacson about Steve Jobs, you know, they said, you know, people aren't going to know with this new iPhone, you know, what to do. And Steve Jobs says, basically, yeah, yes, they will. We have to teach the public what's better for them. We're out of time. We're over time. So thank you, Bob. Let's give a lightning round. One takeaway from today's conversation, if there's something you could tell our millions of subscribers to our YouTube channel and all that. Bob, one takeaway. Josh, one takeaway. Jason, one takeaway, and then we'll wrap things up.
I'll say this: you never stop learning, and always good to tap into some people with experience to glean some knowledge. So they should all do that.
Short and sweet.
Very good. Yeah, I think I'm jealous that Bob works for a company that makes all the cool toys and elevates the technology. But yeah, curiosity is king. And if you have that, you can be going to the greatest school in the world every day.
I have mine isn't a takeaway, it's a question. Bob, why are we at odd numbers instead of even in the Ks? Why is it 17K? I'm just curious.
Well, we went from 12 to 17, and it's because we want to shoot bigger than 16K because 8 in each eye. So you need a little bit more to get around, so you can overshoot for 16.
That's my take.
I was actually going to ask before, like, does 17 mean that we're going to 34 eventually? So
yeah. I don't know. Maybe we'll just have all K.
Right, it's just K.
Yeah.
Infinite
You can
K.
see
It's
the
just...
future with Blackmagic. That's my takeaway. Jason, real quick, what do we have coming up at the Manhattan Edit Workshop?
We'll have a new 6-week starting soon, and we'll be announcing the artist in residence for that. But we'll have that. The early bird for that is ending soon, so I would check that out. If you're watching this, go to the site. And we have color correction classes for that you can learn everything Bob talked about, basically, and check all that stuff out on the site.
On that note, as you can see, MEWShop, no, there it is, MEWShop.com. Stay tuned. We've got very exciting things coming out on the website over the course of the next X amount of time. You know, Bob, I didn't ask you, Any shows coming up that everyone should know about? Any events?
Yeah, we'll be at in New York next week for NAB New York at the Javits. So everybody should come on down.
Yes, I just got Larry Jordan's newsletter, and he's flying him out to do interviews. So get ready for that maroon button down, and I'm sure he'll be sitting with you as he does. I mean, the guy's just unbelievable. But should we do one as a sign off? Should we all just say "Get off of my yard" on 3?
Get off my lawn.
Get off my lawn. I'm sorry, I'm not old enough to know what it is.
Yeah. All right. So on 3, get off my lawn. But you got to say it like Clint Eastwood in Gran Torino. Or
get off my lawn, punk.
Yeah.
I just want to be Hans Moleman from The Simpsons. I'll try mine. My dog didn't like that.
There's the dog is coming into our talking with. Anyway, once again, I'm Rafi Salem with Manhattan Edit Workshop. Thank you, Josh Apter. Thank you, Jason Banky, and our special guest today, Bob Caniglia. I love saying your last name because it's fun, rolls off the tongue. And join us. I'd like to say join us every week for a new episode of Talking with MEWShop. And we're getting there. We're getting there.
Mm-hmm.
Today, I have to tell you, Bob, was a pleasure to meet with someone behind the scenes. We're usually talking with people who are working on your stuff, and you're the guy behind the scenes. So it's a real pleasure to have you on the show today. Thank you.
Thanks,
have a good day, everyone.
All right. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Bob.
Thank you.